Rain soaked through my black coat, sticking the heavy wool to my skin. The cemetery was completely empty, leaving me alone with the wind and the freshly turned dirt over Paul's casket. I pulled my phone from my pocket with numb fingers. The screen glowed against the gray afternoon. I dialed my mother's number. She answered on the second ring. No hello. Just a sharp, irritated breath. It's just a corpse. What's the point of showing up? Crying won't make him produce money. I swallowed the hard knot in my throat, the freezing rain clashing with the sudden burning heat in my chest. I lowered the phone and pressed the red button. The screen went black. In that single, quiet click, 32 years of pretending we were a family vanished into the wet earth. I teach 30 unruly high schoolers every single day. I know exactly how to manage chaos and mask total exhaustion. But walking up the gravel driveway to my parents' house, my legs felt heavier than the wet wool of my coat. Paul was gone. I came here to tell them he had protected me, leaving an $8,500,000 transfer on death trust entirely in my name. I came looking for a sliver of maternal comfort, foolishly hoping the shock of a funeral might actually make them act like a family. The front door hung slightly ajar. The foyer swallowed the fading gray daylight. I stepped onto the hardwood floor, the rubber soles of my boots completely silent. A sharp, festive pop echoed from the kitchen. Champagne. Donna's high-pitched giggle carried down the hall, sharp as broken glass. So the Manhattan penthouse is mine, right? You promised, Mom. LaDonna's voice followed, crisp and terrifyingly calm. Patience, Donna. We have to do this perfectly. Dr. Vance will be here, right at 6. He will sign the 5150 psychiatric hold, documenting that Elysia is a danger to herself, severely suicidal from the bereavement. They will strap her to a bed in a locked ward. Ice replaced the blood in my veins. My breathing stopped. LaDonna kept talking, the delicate clink of crystal glasses underscoring her malice. Once she is heavily sedated on the ward, we go in. We press her thumb onto the drafted power of attorney. By the time the bank even registers Paul's death, we drain the liquid accounts. The trust will be under my control. And you get your penthouse. The warm yellow light from the kitchen spilled across the floorboards, stopping just inches from my feet. My mind flashed back to my 20s, the endless, desperate wire transfers to cover my father's secret debts, the expensive designer bags I bought for Donna, just to secure an invitation to our own Thanksgiving dinner. The pathetic, exhausting years I spent trying to buy LaDonna's approval with my own paycheck. They broke me back then. They trained me to believe I was never a daughter. Just a walking financial portfolio. An asset to be managed and liquidated when the time was right. But standing in that dark hallway, the desperate, pleading daughter finally died. They thought my grief made me weak. They forgot I deal with absolute madness every day in my classroom. My sorrow crystallized into pure, calculating fury. I am the one holding the hammer now. I closed my eyes, steadying my racing heart. I stepped backward, melting entirely into the shadows of the front porch. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind me. The drive to the district attorney's office took exactly 20 minutes. I handed the lead investigator the audio file of LaDonna's champagne toast. 1 hour later, an unmarked gray van parked quietly under the large oak tree at the end of my parents' street. No complicated paperwork, no endless waiting in fluorescent-lit rooms. Just the cold, mechanical gears of justice finally clicking into place. I slipped back into the house through the side door. The air inside the living room hung thick and suffocating, smelling faintly of lemon polish and old secrets. I moved silently toward the mahogany bookcase against the far wall. I placed my open laptop on the middle shelf and slid a heavy, silver picture frame directly in front of the lens. It was a photo from my wedding day. Paul had his arms wrapped tightly around my waist, both of us laughing under a bright, cloudless sky. Now, his smiling face was shielding me one last time. The laptop screen was dimmed to absolute black. The microphone was firmly muted. A silent, encrypted internet video call ran steadily in the background, broadcasting a high-definition view of the entire living room straight to the 2 fraud detectives waiting inside the van. No complicated spy gadgets, no blinking red lights, just a simple, invisible tripwire waiting to be snapped. I dragged my feet toward the center of the room and collapsed onto the beige velvet sofa. I let my posture crumble entirely. I pulled my knees tightly against my chest and buried my chin in my folded arms. I dragged my fingers through my hair, letting it fall in tangled, messy curtains across my face. I slowed my breathing until it sounded ragged and shallow, letting my eyes glaze over to stare blankly at the intricate floral patterns on the rug. They needed a fragile, utterly broken widow to make their little scheme work. I became the exact masterpiece they demanded. I became the pathetic ghost of the daughter they thought they could so easily erase. The heavy brass doorbell chimed, cutting sharply through the silence. My father's heavy footsteps shuffled toward the foyer. The deadbolt clicked, and the heavy oak door creaked open. Low, hushed murmurs exchanged in the entryway. Then, the sharp, rhythmic click of LaDonna's heels echoed down the hallway, leading their very important guest straight toward me. Dr. Vance stepped through the archway into the living room. He held a worn, expensive black leather medical bag in his left hand. His silver hair caught the dim overhead light, perfectly combed as always. He looked down at my huddled body, his mouth twisting into a tight, highly rehearsed frown of profound sympathy. It was a flawless performance of a concerned family physician, but the corners of his eyes betrayed him. He wasn't looking at a grieving patient in need of help. He was looking at an $8,500,000 payday, and I was just the final, annoying piece of paperwork standing in his way. Dr. Vance lowered his medical bag onto the rug with a soft thud. He didn't bother checking my pulse. He didn't even ask how long I had been awake. He just leaned over me, his cologne smelling sharply of peppermint and arrogance. "Elysia, sweetheart," he murmured, his voice dripping with rehearsed clinical pity. "Grief does terrible things to a fragile mind. Your mother tells me you've been speaking to Paul. She mentioned you tried to hurt yourself in the kitchen this morning." I stared blankly at his polished leather shoes. I forced my lower lip to tremble. I let a single, pathetic tear slide down my cheek, playing the broken bird they desperately needed me to be. "It's a textbook case of severe bereavement psychosis," Vance said, turning to LaDonna with a grave, authoritative nod. "She is completely detached from reality. Leaving her here without supervision would be pure medical negligence. I can secure a private room at the Oakwood Psychiatric Facility for a 72-hour hold tonight." LaDonna sighed heavily, pressing a hand to her chest in a flawless display of maternal agony. "Whatever it takes to save my little girl. We are just so incredibly worried." She stepped toward the sofa. My cell phone sat right on the edge of the glass coffee table. LaDonna's hand shot out. Her manicured fingers clamped around the device, snatching it away with brutal, desperate speed. "You won't be needing this," she whispered. Her voice dropped the concerned mother act the absolute second. Vance looked away to open his briefcase. "Rest is what you need. Absolute, uninterrupted rest." She slipped my phone deep into her blazer pocket and offered me a sickening, triumphant smirk. In her greedy little mind, she had just severed my only lifeline to the outside world. She had locked me inside a cage of her own design, leaving me completely at her mercy. She thought she was a master manipulator, but her staggering arrogance was just cementing her own downfall. She had absolutely no idea the black screen of my laptop, tucked neatly behind Paul's smiling face on the bookshelf just 5 feet away, was actively feeding high-definition video and crisp audio straight to the district attorney's task force. She thought she was isolating me in the dark. She was actually taking center stage on a federal live broadcast. Dr. Vance cleared his throat, snapping the briefcase shut. He pulled 2 crisp, white documents from his bag and laid them flat on the glass coffee table. The first was the involuntary psychiatric hold. The second was the heavy, densely typed power of attorney, waiting for my drugged thumbprint to drain Paul's legacy. He smoothed the edges of the paper with his pale, greedy hands. Then, he pulled a silver pen from his breast pocket. Click. The sharp sound of the pen engaging echoed through the quiet living room like the hammer pulling back on a loaded revolver. The black ink bled into the thick paper of the power of attorney. Vance lifted his hand with a slow, exaggerated flourish. A sickeningly satisfied smile stretched across his face. He reached for the psychiatric hold form, ready to seal my fate. I uncurled my legs from my chest and planted my feet flat on the rug. The pathetic, trembling in my shoulders, stopped instantly. I reached up with the back of my hand, wiped the single tear from my cheek, and rolled my neck, letting the tension bleed out of my muscles. I sat perfectly straight. Vance blinked, his pen hovering mid-air. His smile faltered. LaDonna took a half step forward, her brow furrowing in sudden, sharp confusion. The fragile, broken widow was gone. I looked right into Vance's eyes. I gave him a razor-sharp, absolutely ruthless smile. "You just signed your own prison sentence." Wood splintered with a deafening crash. Heavy boots hammered against the hardwood of the foyer. Voices roared commands, shattering the quiet elegance of the house. LaDonna's jaw dropped open. All the blood instantly drained from her face, leaving her skin a sickening, waxy gray. Her meticulously applied blush suddenly looked like cheap paint on a corpse. Her eyes darted wildly, entirely stripped of their usual arrogant control. Vance scrambled backward, his shoe catching hard on the edge of the rug. He stumbled. The silver pen slipped from his violently trembling fingers, clattering against the glass table like a discarded bullet. Uniformed officers swarmed the living room, moving with terrifying speed. 2 detectives shoved past LaDonna, grabbing Vance by the shoulders and spinning him around. The sharp, heavy click of metal handcuffs locking over his wrists echoed above his frantic, high-pitched stammering. Another officer grabbed LaDonna's arms, forcefully twisting them behind her back. She gasped, her chest heaving in absolute panic. Rowan stood frozen near the leather armchair, his face practically melting with terror. The exact moment an officer reached for his collar, his pathetic cowardice erupted. He threw his hands high in the air, his knees visibly buckling. "She forced me!" Rowan screamed, his voice cracking like a terrified child. He pointed a shaking, desperate finger directly at his wife's face. "It was all LaDonna. I told her not to do it. I'll testify against her, I swear to God." LaDonna wrenched her neck around, staring at the man she had dominated for 35 years. Absolute, venomous disgust twisted her features. She spat right at his feet. Right there, surrounded by police, their decades of toxic complicity shattered into worthless, pathetic pieces. A slight movement caught my eye. Donna crouched on the bottom step of the staircase, her hands clamped tightly over her mouth. Heavy tears streamed down her face. She sobbed violently, shrinking into the corner, playing the perfect, traumatized, innocent victim to keep the officers from looking her way. She was saving her own skin, abandoning her mother to the wolves without a single second thought. The detectives hauled LaDonna toward the front door. She thrashed against their iron grip, glaring at me with raw, unfiltered hatred. I stood up from the sofa and smoothed the wrinkles from my black skirt. I stepped cleanly over Vance's discarded pen. I walked straight past my ruined parents, leaving them to the officers, and stepped out into the cold, clean night air. With LaDonna, Rowan, and Dr. Vance sitting in county jail, the house went completely silent. But the rot in my family ran deep. Donna was still breathing free air. She played the traumatized victim perfectly that night, shrinking against the staircase while the police hauled our parents away. She thought she had escaped. But Donna had a massive, terrifying secret. Her glamorous, jet-setting online lifestyle was a complete illusion. She was drowning in $150,000 of debt to a very dangerous, unforgiving private lender. Without LaDonna to steal Paul's trust fund and bail her out, Donna was backed into a corner. The creditors were threatening her life. Her time was up. Panic makes greedy people do catastrophically stupid things. She decided to forge a deed, claiming Paul had gifted her one of the Manhattan penthouses before he died. But transferring real estate requires a licensed notary public. Fueled by absolute desperation and staggering legal ignorance, Donna went online and bought a fake notary stamp. She stamped the forged document right on her bedroom desk. My attorney flagged the fraudulent filing the very next morning. A single phone call could have stopped her. A warning text could have saved her. I chose absolute silence. I let her walk straight into the courthouse. I sat in the back row of the gallery. Donna stood proudly at the front, wearing a designer dress she couldn't afford. She placed her hand flat on the Bible. She looked the judge right in the eye and swore under oath that the deed was authentic. The judge looked down at the paper. He studied the fake ink seal. Then, he simply nodded to the federal marshal standing by the door. Forging a government seal and committing perjury in front of a judge isn't just a minor mistake. It is a federal felony. Heavy steel handcuffs clicked around Donna's wrists right there in the courtroom. She screamed for our mother, completely forgetting LaDonna was already locked in a cell waiting for trial. I swallowed the final trace of pity, turned my back on my sister's frantic sobbing, and pushed open the heavy oak doors. The entire toxic bloodline was finally eradicated. 2 weeks later, I put the childhood house on the market and moved into my penthouse. The gavel striking the wooden block shattered the facade my family had spent 3 decades meticulously building. The legal proceedings were swift, clinical, and merciless. LaDonna was sentenced to 8 years in state prison for conspiracy to commit medical fraud and attempted grand larceny, with eligibility for parole only after serving 6. Dr. Vance was permanently stripped of his medical license and received a 5-year sentence behind bars. My father, Rowan, took a coward's plea deal, turning state's evidence against his own wife to secure 3 years of probation. But the heaviest and most poetic blow fell on Donna. Forging a government notary seal and committing perjury in a federal courtroom earned her a mandatory minimum of 4 years in a federal penitentiary. The judge also ordered a combined restitution of $240,000 in legal fees and punitive damages. The fallout in our hometown was absolute and immediate. The prestigious country club revoked their memberships by the end of the week. The wealthy neighbors who used to attend LaDonna's lavish garden parties suddenly crossed the street to avoid making eye contact with Rowan. Their precious social standing, the only currency they ever truly valued, evaporated overnight. 7 months later, the first piece of mail arrived from the state correctional facility. The envelope was thin, the handwriting shaky but distinctly LaDonna's. I knew exactly what was inside without tearing the seal. It would be a predictable masterpiece of psychological manipulation. She would claim she did it all for my own good, that my grief had clouded my judgment, and that a mother's love requires absolute forgiveness. In the past, an envelope like that would have sent me into a spiraling panic. I would have agonized over every single syllable, desperately trying to find a hidden shred of genuine affection. This time, I stood barefoot in the sunlit kitchen of my Manhattan penthouse, listening to the quiet, steady hum of the espresso machine. Anger never surfaced. Sorrow never materialized. I felt absolutely nothing. I dropped the unopened envelope straight into the stainless steel trash can and poured my morning coffee. The silence that followed in my kitchen was not heavy or oppressive. It was the beautiful, weightless sound of total indifference. My reality today bears absolutely no resemblance to the frantic, anxiety-ridden existence I endured under their suffocating roof. I used a portion of the $8,500,000 trust to establish a permanent educational foundation in Paul's name, helping underprivileged high school students afford university tuition. More importantly, I intentionally surrounded myself with people who actually want to see me thrive. My weekends are no longer hijacked by my family's manufactured financial crises. Instead, my living room is filled with the loud, genuine laughter of my fellow teachers, neighbors who have become fiercely loyal confidants, and the quiet, steady memory of a husband who loved me enough to build a fortress around me. This is my chosen family. We share zero biology, yet we share profound mutual respect. Nobody sitting at my dinner table views me as a bank account waiting to be overdrawn. I am finally just allowed to exist. There is a highly dangerous myth we are taught from the very moment we are born. Society conditions us to believe that blood is thicker than water. We are brainwashed into thinking that sharing DNA means signing a lifelong, unbreakable contract of loyalty, demanding we swallow endless abuse just to keep the peace at a holiday dinner. Narcissistic parents rely entirely on this myth. They do not see their children as independent human beings with their own souls. They see us as extensions of their own ego, as retirement plans, or as automated teller machines designed to fund their delusions of grandeur. Entitlement breeds a specific kind of desperation, the exact kind of blind greed that drove my sister to forge a federal document just to keep up appearances on social media. But here is the truth. They are terrified you will discover. Blood is merely a biological coincidence. Loyalty, respect, and safety are what actually forge a true family. You possess the absolute right to walk away from people who consistently harm you, even if you share a last name. If you are currently trapped in a toxic dynamic, acting as the unpaid employee, an emotional punching bag for your own relatives, I want you to memorize 3 rules of survival. Rule number 1. Trust is earned, never owed. You do not owe your abusers your brilliant future just because they happen to give you your painful past. Rule number 2. Silence is a lethal weapon. Stop arguing with narcissists. Stop trying to explain your profound pain to people who actively benefit from breaking you down. Step back, stay completely quiet, and let their own staggering arrogance and bottomless greed dig their permanent graves. Rule number 3. Living a brilliant, unbothered life is the ultimate life sentence for your abusers. They want you small. They need you dependent. When you build a fortress of peace that they cannot breach, you win permanently. Loss does not erase you. It reveals your truest steel. I thought standing alone in the rain at my husband's grave meant my life was completely over. Instead, it was the exact moment I finally woke up. If you have ever been the financial anchor or the designated scapegoat for your own family, what was the final boundary you drew to save your own sanity? Share your story in the comments below. And please, send this video to someone who desperately needs the courage to finally walk away. You are never entirely alone. I am Elysia, and for the first time in 32 years, I am absolutely free. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there thinking, why on earth did Elysia spend her entire 20s paying off her father's secret debts? Why was she buying designer bags for a sister who actively despised her? Why didn't she just block their numbers 10 years ago? Let me stop you right there. Elysia was not weak, and she was certainly not stupid. She was trapped in a psychological trap known as the slot machine effect, formerly called intermittent reinforcement. You see, toxic families do not treat you terribly 100% of the time. If they did, you would just walk out the door and never look back. Instead, they operate exactly like a rigged casino. They starve you of affection and respect for months, and then, right when you are finally about to give up, they drop a tiny crumb of hope, a fake smile, a Thanksgiving invitation, a rare compliment. You become addicted to the payout. Elysia was not buying those designer bags because she wanted to. She was paying the entry fee just to feel like she had a mother. But the moment that illusion shattered in the rain at the cemetery, Elysia transformed from a victim into a master strategist. Let's break down the exact street-smart financial moves she used to absolutely dismantle them. First, we have building the case. Notice how Elysia never once screamed, argued, or tried to defend herself when Dr. Vance and her mother cornered her in the living room. Arguing with a greedy narcissist is a complete waste of breath. Instead, she let them feel powerful. She set up a hidden video feed, played the broken widow, and let them confess to medical fraud on a live federal broadcast. When someone is trying to steal your assets, do not give them your tears. Give them enough rope to hang themselves. And make sure you are gathering the receipts. Second, she executed the audit strategy. Scammers, especially entitled family members, are incredibly lazy with the details. They think they are above the law. Look at Donna. She wanted a multi-million-dollar penthouse so desperately that she went online, bought a fake notary stamp, and strolled into a courtroom. Alicia did not warn her. She did not try to save her. She just sat back and let the legal system audit the paperwork. Never interrupt a predator when they are making a fatal, documented mistake. Finally, we look at the buyout. Elysia was the sole beneficiary of an $8,500,000 trust. She did not use a single dime of it to bail her parents out. And she did not waste it on endless, messy civil lawsuits trying to get revenge. She let the criminal justice system take out the trash, sold the childhood house, and invested her wealth entirely into her own freedom and her chosen family. Sometimes, walking away cleanly and refusing to engage is the ultimate price you pay to buy back your life. Here is the final verdict. Blood is nothing more than a biological coincidence. Your peace of mind, your boundaries, and your financial security are your actual wealth. Never let anyone overdraft your compassion just because they happen to share your last name. If you have ever had to financially cut off a toxic relative or enforce a brutal boundary to protect your own peace, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button for more street smart life strategies. And remember, your peace of mind is never up for negotiation.